Alice and Her Little Goat. Chapter 1. A Simple Life in a Small Hut. The village where Alice lived was small, with narrow dirt roads and simple houses made of wood and clay. Life was slow and peaceful, but for many families, survival was a daily struggle. Alice's family was one of them. She lived with her parents in a tiny hut at the edge of the village. The hut had only one small room, with a thatched roof that barely held together. The walls had cracks, and when the wind blew strongly, the entire structure shook as if it would fall apart. Alice's father worked as a daily wage laborer, taking whatever jobs he could find, sometimes cutting wood in the forest, sometimes helping farmers in the fields. Her mother did small chores for the villagers, like washing clothes and cleaning houses. Even with all their hard work, they barely made enough money to buy food. But Alice never complained. She was a cheerful girl who found happiness in the little things. And the greatest source of her happiness was her beloved pet goat, Snowy. Snowy was not just a goat to Alice. It was her best friend, her companion, her little family member. It had soft white fur, bright eyes that shone like tiny pearls, and a playful nature that could make anyone smile. Every morning, Alice woke up before sunrise to feed Snowy. She would run outside, pluck fresh green leaves from the trees, and bring them to her beloved pet. Snowy would bleat happily and rub its head against Alice's hands in gratitude. Snowy, of course, didn't understand words, but it always listened, wagging its tiny tail and making small, happy sounds. To Alice, it felt like Snowy understood her feelings better than anyone else. Every afternoon, as soon as school ended, Alice would rush home with excitement. And without fail, Snowy would be waiting for her. Standing near the doorstep, as soon as the goat saw Alice in the distance, it would run toward her. Its tiny legs would move quickly, and Alice would drop her school bag, bend down, and scoop it up in her arms. "Snowy, I missed you so much," she would say, covering the goat's soft head with kisses. The goat would lick her cheek in return, making her giggle. This was Alice's happiest moment of the day. No matter how tired she was from school, seeing Snowy made all her troubles disappear. Little did she know, these beautiful moments were about to be taken away from her forever. Chapter 2. The stormy season begins. Days passed peacefully, and Alice's life remained simple yet joyful. She went to school in the morning, played with Snowy in the afternoon, and spent her evenings helping her mother with small household chores. For the villagers, rain was both a blessing and a curse. It helped the crops grow, but for the poor, whose homes were fragile, it brought great suffering. One evening, as Alice was playing with Snowy outside, thick, gray clouds rolled in from the horizon. The wind began to pick up, blowing through the trees with an eerie howl. The once bright sky turned dark and threatening. A loud boom of thunder echoed through the village, making Alice flinch. Snowy let out a frightened bleat and pressed itself against Alice's legs. "It's okay, Snowy," Alice whispered, gently patting the goat's head. But in her heart, she felt uneasy. Within moments, the rain came pouring down. Large, heavy drops splattered against the ground, creating puddles everywhere. The small roads of the village quickly turned to slippery mud, and people ran to their houses for shelter. Alice grabbed Snowy and rushed inside her hut, just as the rain grew fiercer. Inside the hut, Alice's parents sat near the dimly lit oil lamp, watching as the storm raged outside. The sound of raindrops hitting the roof was deafening, like 1,000 tiny drums beating against the fragile structure. Then, suddenly, drip, drip, drip. Alice looked up in shock. Water was leaking from the roof. The thatched roof, which had already been worn out from years of sun and wind, had started to tear apart. Small holes had formed, allowing the rainwater to drip into their tiny home. Alice's mother quickly grabbed a few old sacks and placed them under the leaks. But as the rain grew heavier, the water began pouring in from different spots. "We need to fix the roof," Alice's father muttered, frustration in his voice. "But how?" Alice's mother sighed. "We don't have enough money to buy new materials." Alice watched as her parents sat in helpless silence. Her heart ached. She knew how hard they worked, yet no matter what they did, poverty always stood in their way. Meanwhile, Snowy shivered in the corner, frightened by the storm. Alice crawled toward it, pulling it into her arms. "Don't worry, Snowy. Everything will be fine," she whispered. But deep inside, she wasn't so sure. The rain continued to pour. The leaks worsened. And in that moment, Alice realized her home might not survive this storm. Chapter 3: A Home in Danger. The storm raged throughout the night. The wind howled like an angry beast, shaking the small huts of the village. Thunder rumbled in the sky, and flashes of lightning lit up the darkness like fire in the heavens. Inside Alice's hut, the family huddled together, watching helplessly as water dripped from the roof, soaking the floor. The old sacks they had used to cover the holes were now soaking wet, barely stopping the rain from pouring inside. Alice's father tried his best to patch the larger holes using pieces of cloth and wooden planks, but the hut was too old. It couldn't withstand the storm. Alice's fear. Alice sat in a corner, holding Snowy tightly in her arms. The little goat shivered, pressing its small body against her chest, frightened by the loud thunder. "It's okay, Snowy. Don't be scared," Alice whispered, though her own heart was pounding with fear. Her mother placed a comforting hand on Alice's head, trying to calm her down. But Alice could see the worry in her mother's tired eyes. "Papa," Alice finally spoke, her voice trembling, "what if our hut falls apart?" Her father sighed, his face filled with exhaustion. "We will find a way, my child. We always do." But deep down, Alice knew the truth. They had no money to repair their home. As the rain continued, the floor of the hut became muddy and wet. Cold wind entered through the small cracks in the walls, making Alice shiver. Her parents sat in silence, worry heavy in the air. How would they survive if the hut collapsed? Where would they go? And most importantly, how would they afford to rebuild it? Alice tried to sleep, but every rumble of thunder and gust of wind made her heart race with fear. Snowy, too, refused to rest, pressing itself against Alice for warmth and comfort. That night, as Alice lay awake, she had no idea that the storm was not just threatening their hut, it was about to change her life forever. Chapter 4: A Harsh Morning. The storm finally ended in the early hours of the morning. The village was silent except for the occasional drip of water from the trees and rooftops. The sky was still gray and heavy, as if the storm had drained all its color. Alice slowly opened her eyes. Her body ached from sleeping on the cold, damp floor, and her clothes were still wet from the leaks. She turned to see Snowy curled up beside her, its tiny body shivering slightly. For a brief moment, she hoped everything was fine, but as she sat up and looked around, her heart sank. The inside of their hut was a mess. Water had pooled on the floor, turning the dirt beneath them into sticky mud. The wooden planks were damp and weak from the moisture, and the sacks they had used to cover the leaks were soaked and useless. But the worst part was the roof. Alice looked up to see larger holes where the rain had torn through the thatched covering. In some places, the roof had completely collapsed, leaving parts of the hut exposed to the open sky. Her father stood outside, inspecting the damage. He ran a tired hand through his messy hair, his shoulders slumped in defeat. Alice and her mother stepped out of the hut. The village looked different. The roads were covered in thick mud, making it hard to walk. Some villagers were gathered outside, trying to fix their homes. The small river nearby had overflowed, flooding some areas of the village. Alice's mother sighed. This storm was worse than last year. Alice's father nodded. If we don't repair the hut soon, we won't have a safe place to live. Alice knew what her parents were thinking, but not saying out loud. They had no money for repairs. Her father earned only a small amount each day, and that was barely enough to buy food. There was no way they could afford new wooden planks, thatch, and tools to fix the roof. Alice looked down at Snowy, who stood beside her, its tiny hooves sinking into the mud. It was the only thing that brought her comfort in this difficult time. She bent down and hugged her little goat, whispering, "At least we're together, Snowy. That's all that matters." But Alice had no idea. Her parents were about to make a heartbreaking decision, one that would take Snowy away from her. Chapter 5. A difficult decision. The storm had passed, but its impact remained. The small hut that Alice and her family called home was now barely livable. Every time the wind blew, it whistled through the cracks in the walls. Whenever a light drizzle started, drops of water leaked through the broken roof. Alice's father spent the entire morning walking around the village, hoping to find someone who could lend him materials or at least suggest a way to fix their hut. But everyone was struggling. Each family had its own problems after the storm. When he returned home, he sat down on the damp floor, his face tired and full of worry. Alice's mother sat beside him, staring at the damaged roof. For a long time, they said nothing. Then, her mother broke the silence. "We have no choice." Alice's father looked at her, understanding what she meant. But he didn't respond. "We must sell Snowy." The words felt like thunder in the silence. Alice's father let out a deep sigh. He had known this moment would come, but he had hoped to avoid it. Their small vegetable garden wasn't producing enough crops. His daily earnings were barely enough for food. Repairing the hut required money they didn't have. Selling Snowy, their only extra possession, seemed like the only way. But there was a problem. Alice loved Snowy. She had raised the little goat since it was born. She played with it, talked to it, and even shared her food with it when she didn't have enough. They knew that if they told Alice about selling Snowy, she would never agree. Alice's mother placed a hand on her husband's shoulder. "We can't tell her. It will break her heart." Her father hesitated. Keeping it a secret felt wrong. But what choice did they have? They had to survive. Later that afternoon, when Alice left to play near the river, her father made his way to the village market. He spoke to a butcher, one who was known for being kind-hearted. "Please," Alice's father said, "take care of the goat. My daughter loves it." The butcher, seeing the sadness in his eyes, nodded. "I understand. I will take good care of it." Alice's father hesitated one last time, but he had no choice. With a heavy heart, he handed Snowy over. Back at home, Alice returned in the evening, excited to see Snowy as usual. But as she reached the front of the hut, her heart stopped. Snowy was gone. Chapter 6. The Empty Yard. Alice ran toward her hut, her school bag bouncing on her back. She had spent the whole day eagerly waiting to come home, because the best part of her day was seeing Snowy waiting for her at the doorstep. But today, Snowy wasn't there. Alice stopped suddenly, her heart pounding. She looked around, expecting to see her little goat running toward her. But the small yard in front of her hut was empty. Her smile faded. A strange sense of unease gripped her heart. Where was Snowy? She turned toward the hut and saw her parents standing nearby. They weren't speaking. They weren't smiling. They just stood there, silent. Something was wrong. Alice dropped her school bag and rushed toward them. "Mama, Papa, where is Snowy?" she asked, her voice slightly panicked. Her mother looked away, avoiding her eyes. Her father cleared his throat, but said nothing. A sharp fear stabbed through Alice's chest. Her breath quickened. "Where's my Snowy? Tell me," she demanded, looking at them desperately. Her father finally spoke, his voice low and heavy. "Alice, listen to me. Where's my Snowy?" she interrupted, her voice rising with fear. She looked around wildly, hoping that maybe Snowy had just wandered off. But Snowy never left the house alone. Her mother finally sighed and placed a hand on Alice's shoulder. "Alice, we had to let Snowy go." Alice's eyes widened in shock. "Let go," she repeated. "What do you mean?" She turned to her father, shaking her head. No, you didn't." Her father's face was filled with guilt. He couldn't look at her. Alice's heartbeat pounded in her ears. A terrible, horrible realization struck her. "You sold Snowy?" she whispered. The silence was her answer. Her legs felt weak. Her hands began to shake. No. This wasn't happening. This had to be a mistake. "You sold my Snowy?" she asked again, her voice trembling. "To whom?" Her father swallowed hard. "To the butcher." Alice felt as if the world had collapsed around her. The butcher. Tears filled her eyes. She took a step back, shaking her head violently. No. You can't do this. Snowy is my best friend. He's my family." Her voice broke as she screamed. Her mother reached out to comfort her, but Alice stepped away. "You didn't even tell me?" Alice sobbed. "How could you do this to me?" She turned and ran. "Alice, wait," her father called. But she didn't stop. Her mind was filled with only one thought. She had to get Snowy back. And she had to do it now, before it was too late.
Chapter 7. A desperate run. Alice ran as fast as she could, her bare feet splashing through the muddy roads. Her heart pounded in her chest, her breath came in ragged gasps, but she didn't care. All she could think about was Snowy, who must be scared, Snowy, who must be looking for her, Snowy, who trusted her. Tears blurred her vision as she ran past the familiar houses of her village. People turned to look at her, surprised to see the little girl running with such panic. "Alice. What happened?" Someone called. "Where are you going?" An old woman asked. But she didn't stop. She couldn't. Her little Snowy was with the butcher. And she knew what butchers did. The thought sent a fresh wave of terror through her body. Please let me reach in time," she whispered to herself. The butcher's shop wasn't far, but to Alice, it felt like miles away. Finally, she saw it, the small wooden shop at the end of the village market. Her legs ached, her chest burned. But she forced herself to run faster. She burst through the entrance, her feet skidding on the wet floor. "Where is my Snowy?" she cried out. The butcher, a large man with a kind face, looked up in surprise. He was in the middle of sharpening his knife. Alice's eyes widened in fear. Her gaze darted around the shop, searching desperately, and then, in the corner of the shop, tied to a wooden post, stood Snowy. Alice's breath hitched in her throat. "Snowy!" she sobbed. The little goat turned its head at the sound of her voice. For a moment, there was silence. Then, it let out a small cry and struggled against the rope. Alice's heart broke. Snowy was still here, but for how long? Alice rushed forward toward her little goat, but the butcher held out a hand. "Alice, you shouldn't be here." She turned to him, tears streaming down her face. "Please, sir, don't take my Snowy away," she sobbed. "He's my best friend. My only friend." The butcher hesitated. He had never seen such desperation in a child's eyes before. "Please," Alice whispered. "I'll give you something in return. Just don't take Snowy away from me." She reached up to her neck and took off her golden chain. It was the only valuable thing she owned. It was a gift from her grandmother, something she had cherished for years, but nothing mattered more than Snowy. She held it out toward the butcher, her hands trembling. "Take this," she said. "Just give me my Snowy back." The butcher looked at the chain. Then at Alice. Then at Snowy. His expression softened. He let out a deep sigh and said, "Keep your necklace, child. Take your goat." Alice gasped, "Really?" The butcher nodded. "Go. Before your parents come looking for you." Alice let out a choked sob of gratitude. She rushed to Snowy, untied the rope, and hugged her little goat tightly. She had saved him, and now she was taking him home. Chapter 8: The Journey Back Home. Relief rolled down her cheeks as she gently stroked his tiny head. "We're going home, Snowy. You're safe now." Snowy let out a soft bleat, as if he understood her words. The butcher watched the little girl with kind eyes. He had seen many things in his life, but never had he seen such pure love between a child and an animal. "Take care of him, Alice," the butcher said. Alice looked up at him, her eyes still wet with tears. "Thank you, sir. I will never forget this." The butcher gave her a small nod and stepped aside. Alice didn't wait another second. With Snowy in her arms, she ran out of the shop, her heart beating fast, not with fear this time, but with joy. As Alice hurried through the village, people turned to watch her. "Isn't that Alice? Why is she carrying her goat? Didn't her parents sell it?" Whispers followed her, but Alice didn't stop to answer anyone. She didn't care what they thought. All that mattered was that Snowy was back. The wind rushed past her face as she ran, and for the first time in hours, she felt free. But as she neared her house, her steps began to slow, her heart tightened. What would her parents say? Would they be angry? Would they scold her? Would they try to take Snowy away again? A sudden wave of fear gripped her. But then, she looked down at the little goat in her arms, the small, helpless creature who trusted her completely, and she knew, no matter what happened, she would protect Snowy. She was ready to face whatever came next. Alice reached the small hut and stopped outside the door. She could hear her parents talking inside. She took a deep breath, tightened her arms around Snowy, and stepped inside. Her mother and father turned to look at her. Their eyes widened in shock. "Alice." Her father gasped, "Snowy?" Her mother whispered, her face pale. For a moment, there was silence. Then Alice, her voice firm and unwavering, spoke, "I brought him back. And I won't let you take him away from me again." Her parents exchanged worried glances. Alice could feel her heart pounding. Would they understand, or would she have to fight for Snowy all over again? Chapter 9, A Daughter's Plea. Alice stood at the entrance of the hut, clutching Snowy tightly. Her small body trembled, but her eyes burned with determination. "I brought him back," she said again, her voice unshaken. "And I won't let you take him away from me again." Her parents sat in stunned silence. Her father's eyes flickered with guilt, while her mother's face showed a mix of shock and concern. Outside, the rain had slowed to a drizzle, but inside the hut, a storm was brewing. Her father stood up sharply, his face darkening. "Alice, do you know what you have done?" he thundered. Alice flinched but didn't back down. "I saved my best friend," she shot back, her voice cracking with emotion. Her father's jaw tightened. He ran a hand through his damp hair, trying to calm himself. "Alice, listen. We had no choice. We need money. The hut is falling apart. You saw the rain last night. Water was pouring through the roof. We can't live like this." Alice shook her head violently. "Then let's find another way," she cried. "We can't sell our family for money." Her words echoed in the tiny hut, sharp and piercing. Her father's expression softened just for a moment. But then, he sighed deeply and looked away. Alice turned to her mother, her last hope. "Mama, please. You understand, don't you?" Her mother's eyes were wet with unshed tears. She had never seen Alice so broken, so desperate. "Oh, Alice. My dear child," she whispered. "I know you love Snowy. But we are struggling to survive. How can we fix the hut? How will we eat?" Alice's throat tightened. She had never thought about those things. She had only thought about saving Snowy. Alice took a deep, shuddering breath. She stepped forward, still holding Snowy close. "I know we are struggling," she said softly. "But we can find another way." Her parents didn't respond. They were listening. Alice hesitated, then made a promise straight from her heart. "I will work. I will help. I will do anything. But please, please don't take Snowy away again." Her voice broke at the end, her tears finally spilling over. For the first time, her father looked at her, not as a little girl, but as someone who truly understood their pain. A long silence followed, then, her father sighed. A deep, tired sigh. "All right, Alice." Alice's breath caught. "You can keep Snowy." Her mother nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. "We won't take him away again." Alice felt her legs go weak. She sank to the floor, hugging Snowy as sobs of relief shook her body. She had won. Snowy was home, forever, and now, it was time to keep her promise. Chapter 10, A New Responsibility. Alice sat on the floor of their small hut, still hugging Snowy as if she would never let him go again. Her heart felt lighter, but she knew this was only the beginning. She had promised her parents that she would help. Now, she had to prove it. She gently placed Snowy down and looked up at her father. "Papa, I mean it. I'll help. I'll do anything to earn money." Her father watched her quietly. There was no anger in his eyes anymore, only exhaustion and a bit of surprise. "Alice, you're still a child. What can you do?" Alice sat up straight, wiping her tears away. "I'll find a way," she said firmly. "I'll work hard." Her mother reached out, brushing Alice's damp hair from her face. "But how, Alice? School is important, too." Alice bit her lip. She wouldn't leave school, but she had to help. Then, an idea came to her. Alice thought about the village market. She had seen women selling flowers, fruits, and handmade items. She had seen little boys helping carry baskets for coins. She could do something, too. Her eyes lit up. "I'll collect flowers," she blurted out. Her mother and father looked at her in surprise. Flowers? Her mother repeated. Alice nodded eagerly. Yes. I see people buying fresh flowers for their homes, for prayers, and for festivals. I can pick wildflowers from the forest. I can sell them at the market. Her father frowned. Going into the forest alone is dangerous, Alice. Alice hesitated, then smiled. I won't be alone. Snowy will come with me. Snowy let out a soft bleat. As if agreeing, her mother and father exchanged looks. Alice's mother spoke first. It will be hard work, Alice. Alice straightened her shoulders. I know. Her father sighed, rubbing his forehead. Then, he smiled slightly for the first time that evening. If you're that determined. Then all right. Alice's heart leaped with joy. Thank you, Papa. She turned to Snowy, hugging him. See, Snowy? We'll work together. Snowy nuzzled against her, his tiny tail wagging happily. Alice had made a promise, and now she would keep it. Tomorrow, a new journey would begin. Chapter 11. The first morning of hard work. The next morning, Alice woke up earlier than ever before. The sky was still painted with shades of soft pink and orange. The village was quiet, except for the distant crowing of a rooster. She turned to Snowy, who was curled up beside her, his small body warm and peaceful. Wake up, Snowy. Today is our first day of work. Snowy let out a soft bleat and stretched his tiny legs. Alice smiled, her heart filled with excitement and nervousness. She quickly freshened up and tied her long hair into a neat braid. Her mother watched her from the corner of the hut. Alice, are you sure about this? Alice nodded firmly. Yes, Mama. I will collect flowers and sell them. I promised you, and I will not break my promise. Her mother sighed, placing a small bundle of food in Alice's hands. Take this. You'll need strength. Alice's heart warmed at her mother's gesture. Even though they had little, her mother still cared for her comfort. Thank you, Mama, Alice said, hugging her tightly. Then, she turned to Snowy. Come on, Snowy. Let's go. Snowy bounced excitedly beside her, his tiny hooves tapping against the ground. Together, they stepped out into the cool morning air. Alice walked toward the edge of the village, where the forest began. The trees stood tall, their leaves glistening with drops of morning dew. A fresh scent of earth and flowers filled the air. Alice had often played near the forest, but today was different. Today, she wasn't playing, she was working. She looked around carefully. She needed the best flowers. We need bright, fresh flowers, Snowy. Snowy, as if understanding, sniffed the ground and wandered toward a patch of wild daisies. Alice's eyes lit up. Yes. These are perfect. She carefully picked the daisies, making sure not to crush their delicate petals. She found roses, marigolds, and jasmine growing nearby. Her hands moved quickly, her heart pounding with excitement. Snowy trotted beside her, his tiny tail wagging. After an hour, Alice had gathered a beautiful collection of flowers. She wiped the sweat off her forehead and looked at Snowy with a grin. We did it. Now, let's take these to the market. Snowy let out a cheerful bleat, with her small hands clutching the bundle of flowers. Alice rushed toward the village. This was just the beginning, her first step toward helping her family. But would people buy her flowers? Would her plan work? She was about to find out. Chapter 12. Alice at the market. Alice walked toward the village market, her small hands clutching the bundle of fresh flowers. Snowy trotted beside her, his little tail wagging happily. The market was already alive with energy. Vendors shouting about their fresh fruits and vegetables, women bargaining over the price of rice and spices, the delicious smell of warm bread and roasted peanuts filling the air. Alice had always loved coming to the market with her mother, but today was different. Today, she wasn't here to buy, she was here to sell. Alice looked around nervously. She didn't have a stall like the other sellers. She only had her little basket of flowers and Snowy beside her. She found a small empty spot near an old tree and sat down. She arranged the flowers neatly, making them look as beautiful as possible. She took a deep breath and called out in her small but determined voice, "Fresh flowers. Beautiful flowers for prayers and festivals." A few people glanced at her, some smiled, but no one stopped to buy. Alice's excitement slowly turned to nervousness. Other flower sellers had big stalls with colorful decorations. They had regular customers who went straight to them. Alice was just a small girl sitting on the ground. Would anyone buy from her? Snowy, sensing her worry, nuzzled her hand. Alice smiled, feeling his warmth. "We can't give up, Snowy. We have to try harder." She stood up and called out again, louder this time, "Fresh flowers. Please buy some flowers." An elderly woman carrying a basket of vegetables stopped and looked at Alice. "Are these your flowers, little one?" Alice nodded quickly. "Yes, ma'am. I picked them fresh from the forest this morning." The woman smiled. "They are very fresh, indeed. How much for a bundle?" Alice's heart leaped with joy. Her first customer. "2 coins for a bundle, ma'am." The woman nodded and handed Alice 2 small coins, taking a bunch of jasmine flowers. "You remind me of my granddaughter. Hardworking and sweet," the woman said before walking away. Alice clutched the coins tightly in her hand. "Snowy. We sold our first flowers." Snowy let out a happy bleat. This was just the beginning. Alice was ready to sell more. She straightened her back, lifted her chin, and called out once more, "Fresh flowers. Beautiful flowers for prayers and festivals." This time, a few more heads turned toward her. Would she sell more? She was about to find out. Chapter 13. The Struggles of a Young Seller. Alice sat up tall and confident as she called out once more, "Fresh flowers. Beautiful flowers for prayers and festivals." A few people turned toward her. A middle-aged woman carrying a basket paused for a moment, considering. Alice's heart raced with hope. The woman stepped closer, examining the flowers. "These are nice, little girl. But I usually buy from old Monty's stall. Why should I buy from you?" Alice swallowed hard. She wasn't prepared for that question. She glanced down at her flowers, then looked back up, her eyes shining with sincerity. Ma'am, I picked these flowers fresh this morning from the forest. They are as fresh as they can be. And Alice hesitated, then added softly, "I am selling them to help my parents." The woman raised an eyebrow. "Help your parents? You're just a child." Alice nodded firmly. "Yes, ma'am. But our house is old, and the rain is leaking inside. I don't want my parents to suffer. So, I decided to sell flowers to earn money." The woman's expression softened. She reached into her pouch and handed Alice 3 coins instead of 2. "I'll take 2 bundles. 1 for my home and 1 for the temple." Alice's eyes lit up. "Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much." Snowy let out a happy bleat as Alice carefully wrapped the flowers in a small cloth and handed them to the woman. Alice clutched the coins in her hand. This was going well, or so she thought. Just as Alice was about to call out again, she heard a sharp voice from nearby. "Hey, little girl. What are you doing here?" Alice turned to see an older girl, around 14 years old, standing with her hands on her hips. She had a basket of flowers too, but hers were wrapped in colorful ribbons. Her name was Rita, the daughter of a flower seller who had a proper stall in the market. Alice stood up nervously. "I'm selling flowers, miss." Rita narrowed her eyes. "This is our business. You can't just sit here and sell flowers like that." Alice's heart sank. She hadn't thought about this. Was she not allowed to sell here? She looked around. Other vendors had proper stalls. but she was just sitting on the ground with her small bundle of flowers. Would they really ask her to leave? Rita smirked. No one will buy from you if you just sit there looking sad. You need a stall, and you don't have one. Alice swallowed hard. But I have fresh flowers, she said softly. Rita tossed her hair. Everyone has fresh flowers. But I have better ones. So go home, little girl. Alice felt a lump in her throat. She had worked so hard to come here. Was it all for nothing? Snowy, sensing her distress, pressed against her leg. She took a deep breath. No, she wasn't going to give up. She lifted her chin and looked straight at Rita. I'm not going home. Rita raised an eyebrow. Alice clenched her fists. I will stay here and sell my flowers. I may not have a stall, but I have hard work. And I believe in my flowers. Rita scoffed. Let's see if anyone buys from you. She turned away, flipping her braid over her shoulder, and walked back to her stall. Alice took a deep breath. She wasn't leaving. She had to prove that she could do this. But would customers really buy from her instead of the big stalls? She had to find a way fast. Chapter 14. The Power of Kindness. Alice clenched her small fists, her heart pounding. She had come to the market with a dream, to sell her flowers and earn money for her family. But now, standing against Rita's arrogance and the big flower stalls, she felt small. She looked down at her simple basket of freshly picked flowers. She had no fancy decorations, no ribbons, no stall, but she had something special, her determination and honesty. Snowy, sensing her emotions, rubbed his head against her leg. Alice took a deep breath and whispered, "We won't give up, Snowy." Then, an idea struck her. Instead of sitting and waiting for customers, Alice stood up. She carefully picked up a few flowers, tied them together with a thin grass strand, and approached a group of women buying vegetables. With a warm smile, she said, "Good morning, ma'am. I picked these flowers fresh from the forest. Would you like to take some home?" The woman turned to look at Alice. "Oh. You're selling flowers? How much?" Alice's eyes lit up. "Only 2 coins for a bundle." The woman took a deep sniff of the flowers. "They smell so fresh." "All right, I'll take one." Alice quickly handed over the flowers and received the coins, her heart swelling with happiness. She turned to another woman nearby and offered her a small jasmine garland. "For your hair, ma'am. Fresh and fragrant." The woman smiled and took one. Soon, Alice moved from one corner of the market to another, personally offering flowers to people. Unlike the stall owners who just waited for customers to come to them, Alice was reaching out with kindness and a smile. Rita, watching from her stall, was shocked. "What is she doing?" she muttered. She had expected Alice to give up and leave, but instead, Alice was selling more than ever. Customers who had never noticed her before were now buying from her. They weren't just buying flowers. They were touched by her kindness and honesty. Even an old priest stopped by and bought a handful of flowers for the temple. "You are a hard-working child, my dear. May your heart always remain pure." Alice bowed gratefully. Her basket grew lighter and lighter as the flowers disappeared one by one, and then, before she knew it, she had sold everything. She looked down at the small pile of coins in her hands. Her eyes filled with tears, not of sadness, but of pure joy. "Snowy, we did it. We really did it." Snowy let out a cheerful bleat, hopping around her excitedly. Alice turned back to the market one last time. The people had welcomed her. Her efforts had paid off, and most importantly, she had learned something valuable. Kindness, hard work, and honesty would always find a way to shine. But the journey wasn't over yet. She had made some money, but was it enough to save her little goat from being sold? Would she reach home in time to stop her parents? Her heart raced as she grabbed Snowy's leash and hurried home, praying she wasn't too late. Chapter 15, A Race Against Time. Alice clutched the small pouch of coins tightly as she hurried through the village, Snowy trotting beside her. Her heart pounded. Would she make it in time? Had her parents already sold Snowy? The thought sent a chill down her spine. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, but Alice had no time to admire it. Her only thought was Snowy. She ran faster, her small feet kicking up dust on the narrow path. Her house was just around the corner, but then she saw something that froze her in place. Outside their small hut, her parents stood, talking to a man. Alice's eyes widened. It was the butcher, and in his hands, he held Snowy's leash. Alice's breath caught in her throat. No, 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 no. Tears filled her eyes as she ran toward them, her voice breaking. Papa. Mama. Please, no. Don't sell Snowy. Her parents turned, shocked to see her. Alice. Why are you running? Her mother asked. Alice didn't answer. She threw herself at Snowy, hugging him tightly. The little goat nuzzled against her, letting out a soft, sad bleat. I earned money. Look. Alice cried, opening her pouch. She held out the small pile of coins with trembling hands. Please, Papa. I sold flowers today. I can keep selling more. But please, don't sell Snowy. Her father's face darkened. Alice. This is not enough money. Alice's heart sank. The butcher sighed. He was a kind man, not cruel, but business was business. Little girl, I already paid for the goat. Alice's hands tightened into fists. Her gaze fell on the gold chain around her neck. It was the only valuable thing she had, a gift from her grandmother. Without hesitation, she tore it off and held it out. Take this. This is worth more than the money. But give me back my Snowy. The butcher looked at the delicate chain in her small hand. His expression softened. He had seen many things in his life, but he had never seen such pure love between a child and an animal. He sighed deeply and shook his head. Keep your necklace, child. Alice blinked, her heart racing. The butcher bent down, gently patting her head. Your love for this little goat is more precious than gold. Take him back. Alice gasped. Really? You mean it? The butcher smiled. Yes, little one. A love like this should never be broken. Alice burst into tears, but this time, they were tears of happiness. She hugged Snowy tightly, pressing her face into his soft fur. Her parents watched in silent shock. They had never realized just how much Snowy meant to Alice. Her father sighed and placed a hand on her shoulder. I'm sorry, Alice. We didn't want to hurt you. We were just thinking about survival. Alice wiped her tears and looked up bravely. Papa, I will work hard. I will sell flowers every day. We will find another way. Her father's eyes softened. He pulled Alice into a tight embrace. You are a strong girl, Alice. We are proud of you. Snowy bleated happily, hopping around in circles. That night, despite their struggles, their small home was filled with warmth and love. Alice had saved her best friend, and more importantly, she had proved that love, determination, and kindness could change even the hardest hearts.